said you can look into her yourself, Mimi Marchand. In fact, I think the New York Times just did a takedown piece of her and all of her involvement. Well, just over a year after Macron was inaugurated, the president of France, Mimi had this picture of herself taken in the presidential office, making a V for victory sign with her hands. Yeah, because they were indeed victorious in having fooled the public about Brigitte. That's what I would imagine that's all about. But then something really interesting happened, okay? Very interesting happened. Brigitte and Emmanuel, shortly after that photo was taken, made the decision to sort of carefully pull away from Mimi Marchand, their PR fixer woman, because she was involved in another scandal. And you guys, I'm telling you, it just seems to be a lot of oopsies around this couple. It's weird, okay? So Mimi also shares another friend with Brigitte. They have a mutual friend in a billionaire, and that is named Marc Ladry de la Charrière, okay? Marc is so close to Brigitte, to be very clear, so close to Brigitte Macron, and he enjoys being photographed out with Brigitte Macron, so close that they decided to attend the production of a show together, a show called Starmania. And you're going, wow, why do I remember Candace talking about Starmania on the last episode? Oh, because that was the show that they attended together that was produced by Thomas Joly, where Brigitte then handpicked Thomas Joly to do the Olympics. So Marc Ladry was with her, okay, at that premiere when they were like, this is the right guy to throw on these Olympics, which the Olympic show, which had obviously transgendered individuals, we had drag queens that were strutting. There was a lot going on that offends my Christian senses, and I would call it satanic. Anyways, you're probably wondering why Mimi's mutual friend with Brigitte caused a problem for the presidential couple, in which suddenly they said, we've got to back away from Mimi. Well, Marc, that guy Marc Ladry, another billionaire, happens to have a really troubled son named Jeremy. And shortly after Mimi took that picture in the presidential office, it was revealed that Mimi did her friend Marc a solid by keeping Jeremy's name and his face out of the press, because she runs the press. Like, she's like a press gangster, so to speak. Jeremy, his son, was the former manager of a children's entertainment company who was twice convicted, once in 2008 and once in 2015. And you're never going to guess what it was for: child pornography cases. And then again, beyond this time, and recently in 2004 and 24, the mother of his children summoned police to their place in Marrakesh out of fear after she went through his computer. And they have very young children. The ages at that time were 3 and 1, I believe, after discovering even more images on his computers. Investigators collected 4,000 images of children on his computer, naked children that were being raped. For that, he has, by the way, gotten another slap on the wrist. What I was able to determine online, and again, obviously French is not my first language, is that he's been sentenced to just 8 months for that, and that sentence has been suspended, meaning it won't happen until down the line. That's the last I could find on it. I'm happy to correct that if that information is wrong. So that's 3 child pornography convictions for Marc. And Mimi helped cover up the one in 2015. And so anyways, covering up Jeremy's tracks and that conviction was a bad look for the newly presidential couple. And so they began to pull away from her. But Mimi's kind of one of these people, like we were talking about yesterday, these PR agents that you just don't cross, okay? And she didn't like that. She didn't like that people were starting to say that she was on the outs, that she was no longer allowed into Élysée Palace. Then a book was published in October of 2018 called The Book of Mimi, and it became even more clear that she was persona non grata in the presidential inner circle, and she was no longer invited to attend the Thursday meetings at the Élysée. And so what does a PR person do when they feel burned? They drop a bomb in the press. And it looks like she indeed dropped a bomb, an explosion in the press about Brigitte Macron in the magazine called Closer, okay? Brigitte had somehow been spotted at the entrance to the American hospital in Paris, reportedly for undergoing cosmetic surgery under general anesthesia. And the First Lady was furious about this publication, okay? She publicly condemned Closer magazine for her favorite invasion of privacy, okay? Understandable if you're at the hospital getting some work done. Her reaction, though, seemed like an overreaction, especially to journalist Xavier Poussard. It just struck him as odd because a year earlier, another magazine called The Express had similarly outed her for going under the knife with a doctor named Dr. Sydney Ohana, and yet she didn't care. She didn't face any. That doctor and the Express did not face any public condemnation. Brigitte was not mad at them. So Xavier's going, what particularly about this publication and Closer made her freak out, made her go so far as to set for the first time a precedent in which the First Lady came out and publicly condemned the press? So he began poring over that article in Closer, trying to understand, what did I miss? What did I miss? What's in here that set her off? And he found it. You see, while Closer had not named the surgeon, they didn't at all name the surgeon who worked on Brigitte, they did this sort of petty thing where they left a massive, undeniable clue as to who the surgeon was. In the magazine, they described the surgeon as a, quote, eminent and media-savvy plastic surgeon who would keenly quote Victor Hugo, his favorite expression, woman's flesh, ideal clay. Well, there was only one surgeon who had been featured in the press with that quotation just a year earlier in Paris Match, and his name was Dr. Patrick Buey. He's a plastic surgeon at the American Hospital in Paris, who in that Paris Match feature, which was entitled Operation Young Again, replied to a question that he was asked, and he said, woman's flesh, ideal clay. Now, why was this a bombshell in Closer, or rather a threat that was made, a shot that was fired, if you will, to Brigitte Macron? Because in France, Patrick Buey is known most eminently for one thing: feminization surgery. He is the king of transgendered feminization surgery, to soften the face features. If you are a man trying to become a woman, he will soften your face features with feminization surgery. And if there was any question that was remaining in anyone's minds as to whether or not he was indeed being used by Brigitte Macron, they needed to just wait until 2023, because here's a picture of them together. Yep. Years later, in 2023, Emmanuel Macron decided to award Dr. Patrick Buey with the French Legion of Honor, a high distinction in the French Republic. Imagine the medal. It's the Medal of Freedom in America. He's being awarded that. We're going to pause there because that is a lot of information for you to digest, information for you to unpack, and information for you to research. Again, we are at the very tip of the iceberg when it comes to this couple and the connections and the power that they have and how they were able to execute this farce in the public. What we will show you in the next episode is how the storyline begins falling apart. And we can bring up that timeline again, how this perfectly curated idea of Brigitte's background, absent any pictures, people started to go, wait a second, something's not right here. And it sort of begins with just a couple of pictures that are released of Brigitte Macron in those years when she was allegedly a pinup doll. And she didn't look anything like a pinup doll. And she wasn't wearing short skirts. She was wearing baggy suits. And no, it didn't seem like someone